Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Locking down the middle of the day, live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Off and running, Friday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, presented by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. Matt Musso filling in for Hunt Palmer today. Hunt will be back on Monday. Taylor Sharp on the audio board. Cassie Spazzali pushing the buttons, keeping us on YouTube and the video element of the show. Glad to have you all along for the ride as well. We got a jam-packed show here. LSU-Texas A&M in baseball Friday night, Bluebell Park over in College Station. Supposed to begin at 6 p.m. We'll see if that actually happens. Probably won't, but we'll see. There's some weather in the forecast that we'll get in here too momentarily. We'll have a few different segments to talk about that game and that series. Richard Zane covers Texas A&M baseball for Tex Ags. He'll be here at the top of the second hour to give us the perspective of A&M and kind of some boots on the ground, how things are looking in College Station right now. Of course, Preston Guy in his normal spot at 1:15 here on a Friday. Plenty to talk about when it comes to recruiting with LSU. Obviously, the A.J. Halsey news is front and center as the top available safety, number 2 safety in the portal, is set to visit LSU on Sunday. We'll get Preston to tell us the latest, how LSU feels about things going into that visit. Of course, Miami was heavily in the running. You saw them take a safety out of Tennessee from the Vols yesterday, so you would think that eliminates them. Is LSU the only team left at the table? All things we could talk about with Preston Guy as well here coming up shortly. So fired up for today's show. Let's start, though, with some LSU baseball and Texas A&M. Just some brief thoughts, kind of an overview, if you will, on the series. Again, like I said, we'll get a much more in-depth piece on the Aggies from Richard Zane, and I'll give you my final series thoughts in the second hour. But unfortunately, as we've had to do so often this season when talking LSU baseball and the beginning of a series, we have to talk about the weather and kind of start with the weather. And I'll be honest, I'm so friggin' tired of talking about the weather surrounding LSU baseball this year. Do you realize that LSU has had just 4 series all year that haven't had a game moved due to weather? And one of those, oddly enough, was the Oklahoma series, where it was just miserable up in Norman for 3 days. You had temperatures in the 40s, wind chills in the 30s, and you're trying to play baseball in it. You thought those games would be moved, but they wouldn't. But all but four series this year have been impacted by weather. Of course, LSU's played until 1 o'clock in the morning on 3 different occasions now. Normally that only happens in the SEC tournament. Oddly enough, maybe that might help LSU when you come to Hoover, and you might have to play late into the morning, or early in the morning, I should say. We'll approach that bridge when we get to it. But the same can be said here now for College Station. You're scheduled for a 6 p.m. first pitch on Friday night. There is a 49% chance of rain as it stands right before I came into the studio to do this show at 6, which you say, oh, that's not too bad. The problem is there's like a 75% chance of rain at 7. You know they're not going to send Ryan Prager or Cade Anderson out there to start that game until they know they have a window to get it in. Nor should they. Like, that is the right move. 100%. The rain chances decrease as you get a little bit later into the night, but never really below 40%. Do you even have a window? That's going to be the question they have to ask themselves. If not, Saturday looks good. You could obviously play 2 games there. None of the games are on linear television this weekend, so you don't really have to maneuver around a TV schedule. They're all on the SEC Network Plus, and you could figure it out and map the schedule out as well. I'm just itching for a time where we don't have to talk about weather anymore surrounding LSU baseball this year, because it's been every week. Like, virtually it's been every week. So that's your latest there. Enough of the weather talk. I'm not a meteorologist. I want to talk more about the series. And this is a fascinating series for a lot of different reasons. Texas A&M couldn't have been any hotter than they were heading into Austin, Texas a week ago, with all the revenge factor on the table. Everything you could want, except the series wasn't at home. They go in there, they play tough, they lose 3 one-run games, and they're swept. And you know what? I don't think that impacts this series one bit. I think Texas A&M in front of their home crowd is going to be jazzed up, ready to go, renewed with a purpose, looking at the goals ahead of them that are all still there. It is remarkable, the similarities to this series last year to this year, just in reverse. Texas A&M came into the box the very same weekend, mind you. Game 2 of that series was May the 4th. That's the date LSU won the series. May 4th is Sunday this year. It's the exact same weekend on the calendar. LSU entered that series fighting for their postseason life. They had 7 SEC wins, needing 6 more in the final 3 weeks to get to 13 and have a chance to get into the postseason. A&M enters with 8 this year, needing to get to 13, 14 to have a chance to get in. More on that momentarily. Texas A&M was ranked number 1 in the country going on the road, steamrolling towards the postseason and locking up a national seed. LSU is number 2 in the country going on the road, steamrolling toward the postseason and locking up a national seed. We all remember how that one turned out. That should be all the information you need to understand anything can happen this weekend. LSU and A&M are both extremely talented teams. That might be one difference. I'd say talent in this series right now, probably about a push. Last year, Texas A&M was much more talented than LSU, and LSU won the series at home. But this whole idea that, A&M might have been knocked down a peg at Texas, it hurts your pride. Man, I mean, you had all year to look forward to that weekend, go against your former head coach. You're playing your best ball when it gets here, and you walk out of there with 3 losses. But when you look at A&M's schedule, they have LSU at home, Missouri at home, which, come on, we know how that's going to go. And then they finish up at Georgia. They're at 8 wins. A&M needs to get to 13. You need 5 wins out of those 9 games remaining. Conventional wisdom and a large sample size at this point would tell you they're going to get 3 of them against against Missouri. On the road in Athens, that could be tough. The series at home against LSU, you would think on your home field, you have a pretty good shot at that one. The A&M camp, that is. So they're going to come out ready to play. I have no doubt about that. Will it be good enough? That's another question. Because A&M, it's been a roller coaster. I think last week in Austin, preceded by the 3 weeks prior, show that better than anything. Yeah, you got off to the rough start. You started 1-8 in the league. Okay, that happens. I mean, that's happened to just about at least one team each of the last, that you thought was going to be near the top, each of the last 3 seasons. I mean, maybe even more than that. Each of the last 4 seasons. Heading into 2021, State coming off the national championship, you know what happened there. Ole Miss, same deal. LSU, same deal. Florida last year, too. This year, it was A&M and Florida again. But what you've seen is teams bounce back from that. So you thought, okay, there's going to be a chance they do, and they do. But A&M, when the offense has been struggling, the pitching's been good. When the offense has been humming, the pitching hadn't been there. They still haven't been able to really put it together, which is why they're still just on this up and down roller coaster of a track here on this season. Again, you couldn't have been playing better baseball. Offensively, especially heading into that series in Texas, and you lose 3 one-run games. The offense sputters, but you pitched phenomenally. So the better question is not if A&M is going to be fired up, ready to go in this series, because I have no doubt about that. The better question is which Texas A&M team shows up and which version of that does LSU match up better against? Does the team that's going to slug the baseball show up but struggle on the mound? Or is it the team that's going to dominate on the mound but struggle to get the ball, get runs across the plate, put the ball in play, things of that nature? And which one does LSU match up better against? I would tell you I like LSU much more in a slugfest than if LSU's offense is sputtering, because you kind of saw that the first 2 games where pitching held an upper hand over LSU a week ago against Tennessee. Now you won one of them, and that could very well happen here too. But even throughout the struggles, I would look at LSU's offense. There's some things I like matchup-wise in this series that we'll get into later, but that's still the strength of your team. So we'll see. But to me, that's the question. Which version of Texas A&M shows up? Or the third option, which I really hope doesn't happen, they finally put it together for a weekend. Because, man, if LSU can go on the road, take 2 out of 3 in this series, you bring back some of your margin for error. You get that back. Because you'll have a home series against Arkansas that you'll feel like you can go win, and then you're on the road at South Carolina to wrap it up. You don't win this one, you still are operating with very slim margin for error. Winning it gets it back a little bit. We'll see. As I said, we got plenty more coming on this series. Just kind of wanted to give you some overarching thoughts kind of to kick off the show. Richard Zane from Tex Ags will be here straight up 2 o'clock. Then I'll give you my final thoughts on the series and a pick.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp.
All right, we're back here on the Hunt Palmer Show on a Friday, of course. Quirks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Musso filling in for Hunt. We're working on connecting with Preston Guy right now. We're good, Taylor? We got him? All right, awesome. Well, then we'll just punt what we were going to kind of fill there with, and we'll go to Preston. Preston Guy with Hunt every Friday. He was with me last Friday, and now again here this Friday. Of course, you can read his stuff over at tigerbait.com. Find him on Twitter X at pguy77. Preston, it's great to chat again, man. How are you?
Hey, good, Hunt. Thanks for having me here. I'm glad someone works on a Friday around here.
Yeah,
not Hunt. But
no, not Hunt.
Someone doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, I assumed Hunt was back, just full bore, ready to go this week. And then on like Tuesday, I was like, hey, Moose, can you host? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So here we are. But, man, it kind of works out because the first thing we're going to talk about is A.J. Halsey. And, Preston, I'm sure you remember, I remember, when I sat here a week ago in this chair and talked to you, we were talking about transfer portal and them landing Bernard Gooden, and I'd asked you, okay, man, if there's one more position, what would it be? You said safety. Well, here we are. A.J. Halsey set to visit LSU on Sunday. What else can you tell us about the latest in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working around talking with people about it. I'm a little surprised to see this come up, especially at this point in the game, and hearing that LSU coaches didn't see anybody else in the portal that they thought to pull in. However, this is a position of need, and frankly, AJ was the one, or at least his agency was the one, who reached out to LSU thinking this would be a good fit. Now, he had 74 tackles, 5 interceptions last year, and he was actually first team all Big 12. But despite that, my understanding is that LSU coaches, they feel he's more of a depth piece. They want him to come in and earn a spot on the field. They don't think he's just the solution to all their problems at safety, and they think that the players they have currently are as good, if not better, than him. So they definitely want him, right, to come in and contribute and compete. But I don't know that they're willing to empty out any resources to bring him in. But it certainly would make you feel a bit more comfortable at that safety spot, given that you've got someone who's played well at the Power 5 level in there competing with guys for that spot.
Okay, so that's kind of where I was going to go next is where LSU views him on the depth chart. We can come back to that. I know Miami was kind of in on this too. They just took a safety from Tennessee a day ago, so you would think that they're out. Who else might be competing with LSU for Halsey, and how do they feel about where they stand in the recruitment so far?
Yeah, they feel like they've really kind of wired themselves for success with him. They're not out here just trying to be the biggest bidder. They really, they really feel like this is a good team and a place he wants to be. SMU is another team to watch out. That's his agency actually put out a top 3, which is a little strange to actually see someone else other than Hayes Fawcett put out a top 3 graphic. But that's who he's competing with. Yes, Miami is not the team you want to hear you're trying to outbid.
Right.
Miami has been known to, especially late in these portal processes, put a lot of money and overpay for a kid, right? So the fact that Miami went another direction makes me feel a lot better. I think LSU wants him. I think LSU fans are on the same page, though, when they say you want him, but you don't want to clear yourself out to where it's costing you a player, say, in next year that you really want. to get him, or maybe even a high school kid, right?
Yeah. Has he visited SMU? Do you know?
I don't believe he has. No,
Okay.
I believe he's Miami and LSU. But what I believe is going to happen is I have a lot of confidence that LSU lays the groundwork. They're going to light it up this weekend, and I think that it's going to be more of a yes or no situation for LSU. Either I like you and I'm coming, or I'm moving on,
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's kind of the thing. It's what everyone always talks about with free agents in the NFL is when you get them in the building for a visit, don't let them leave without signing the contract. Transfer portal has become that as well. And when you get them on campus for a visit, you want them to commit, right then and there. So that's kind of why I was asking about SMU. Like, okay, if he's been there and he hadn't, they let him get away without doing it, and that just plays more into LSU's favor. Okay, well, we'll see. A.J. Halsey, of course, out of Houston. He will visit LSU on Sunday. That is this a multi-day visit, do you know, Preston, or just Sunday?
My understanding is that it's Sunday at least for now. I don't know if he'll be here past that date or not. But, like you were saying there, this isn't like a high school recruiting trip where you're waiting for a certain period to bring him in. You want to try to, if he's here, close the deal before anybody else gets a chance to talk to him.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they're going to be trying to do on Sunday. Okay, well, you said high school recruiting there. Speaking of which, LSU did get a commitment from Havon Finney Jr. out of California, 4-star cornerback earlier in the week. What can you tell us about Finney Jr.?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. He reclassified to the class of 2026. And when he was a part of the 2027 class, he was actually the number one corner in the nation. So that kind of shows you the talent potential. I always find it a little funny when a kid reclassifies. So you saw him as this high, 5-star number one player for this class, but he moves on. And is it that he's not developed? Or is it that you don't think he will develop? Or is it that he's just not up to par with the other players right now? I'd really like to get in some of these scouts' minds for these evaluation services and figure out what they're judging that on. I guess famously Colin Hurley went from being a 5-star quarterback in his class, which was supposed to be this year coming up, 2026, and then moved up and got bumped down to, about a top 15 quarterback instead of a top 3 or 4 quarterback. But he's still a 5-star on Rivals, I can tell you that much. So anytime any kid has a 5-star designation at any site, that's a good sign. We're talking about a 6'2", thin, long-armed corner. Corey Raymond loves these guys. Just look at DJ Pickett. Think back in the day, Harold Simon, guys like that. He loves a long-limbed corner, and that's what you're getting. Of course, a little odd to pull a kid out of California. You don't see LSU going to the other LA to pull very many kids here, but that's exactly what they did, and it's certainly a good spot, and it bolsters their currently number one class right now that is 90% blue chip prospects. Actually,
I saw that earlier today, and I'm glad you brought up California, because that was kind of be my next question. I mean, look, it's the NIL era. Everything's different with recruiting. Can they hold on to him?
Well, it's a great question. I guess if I had that answer, I would probably I'd probably know more than the kid himself at this point. Yeah. But I will just tell you the era we're in is, especially with out-of-state kids who don't have any rooting devotion for your team, anybody can come in with a lot of money at the last second. I would say the amount of flips and chain and decommitments that we're seeing in this era has probably gone up a significant portion. So I don't have a direct answer, yes or no, but I'm gonna tell you right now it feels great, but it is a long, I guess, what are we, April? We're about 8 months away. It's a long 8 months away before ink goes to paper, and I mean, money talks in this industry.
Yeah, I asked you that knowing that was probably going to be the answer, but it feels like one of those things after Bryce Underwood, you kind of just always have to ask now, wait, can they actually hang on to him? Okay, from an out-of-state cornerback to an in-state cornerback, let's talk Hayward Howard Jr. out of Edna Carr. I mean, look, Carr has obviously been incredibly good to LSU. It's kind of just been like a minor league, franchise for LSU football. Hayward Howard, he picks up an offer from LSU kind of late in the cycle for 2026, but it's hot and heavy now with him and the Tigers.
It's late, but it's also not late to the point of like, come on, man, I've got my official visits. I've already planned them out. You know what I mean? I remember, Rashawn Matthews' kid, Jordan Matthews, a couple years ago for Woodlawn. Brian Kelly didn't come in and offer him till July. And, you talk to that kid, and it's like, man, I'm in the middle of scheduling my officials. And this is it. Like, I decided in December, you waited this long to give me an offer? No, you guys got some ground to make up. It's not like that. So they probably got in at a good moment. I can tell you we had Grant Shashery, one of our beat reporters here for Tiger Bait, do a story on him not too long ago, and he certainly has, an admiration of LSU. That being said, there's still teams you still have Miami there. You still have Ole Miss there pushing for him. And these are teams that were in on him earlier. So, LSU was taking their time evaluating him, seeing if he was a guy they want in. Another thing stands out to me, this kid's 6'2". Another long, tall corner. That's what Corey Raymond likes to go for. So I certainly think he'd be a good fit in the program. I just wonder, how much interest might have been lost in the time that LSU was waiting and doing their evaluations on him.
We'll have to wait and see. I know that you're certainly starting to see a little bit more projections. As you would expect, in-state kid, New Orleans car. Like as we said, it's just been a feeder.
Right.
Just a feeder for LSU, and they've had great success there. Talking with Preston Guy, of course, covers LSU football and recruiting over at tigerbait.com, so you can find his stuff. Of course, get him on Twitter, X, at PGuy77. Listen to him here every Friday on the Hunt Palmer Show. Preston, kind of want to step away from recruiting for a little bit because, what's interesting after the draft passes is it's not just, it's look at all the guys that signed. You're obviously your NFL team you're excited about, but you also have to then turn your focus on replacing the guys that your college team lost. The biggest one that LSU lost is Will Campbell, and those are huge shoes to fill. Tyree Adams going to get first crack at that. Confidence level there, and maybe a little bit about what you saw from him in spring, showing that he's maybe ready for that spot.
I'm not so certain that anybody on the offensive line should feel safe given what we saw in the spring where these edge rushers frankly dominated. In that spring open practice where they allowed fans in, I think we counted 6 or 7 sacks. I think that there's a lot of room for improvement across this offensive line. The thing that stood out to me is they went with all veterans for the whole spring practice instead of the incoming guys, that they brought in highly touted both transfer portal guys and highly touted freshmen. And we didn't see any of the newcomers even sniff the first team while we were there. It was very much so returning starters. I do think of the guys in their positions, and this is all 5, I think Tyree Adams is the one that the coaching staff has the most faith in. They really like him as a nimble left tackle. But, man, I wouldn't be surprised if that starting 5 that you saw in spring camp, if none of the 5 guys are starting in the position they're at. Of course, the most surprising would be Tyree Adams to be moved out of his spot. But it really, that wouldn't surprise me to see him move to another spot or see another guy hit that. It just, I think it needs some shaking up, and they have a lot of new faces that they were just getting put into the system and evaluating before they really injected into a starting role.
Okay, so if Tyree Adams would be the least likely to lose his spot, who would you – I'll ask it this way. Who would you not be surprised to see not on that starting 5 come fall camp?
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing that I almost expect to see is DJ Chester slid inside. So, again, I was saying in the spot that they're at.
Right.
That's kind of what I was getting at. That would be something like Braylon Moore, a veteran center from Virginia Tech. I could very easily see him slide in as your starting center and DJ Chester slide out to guard for either Mabinga or one of those guys, right? Weston Davis is a guy they really like his upside. They brought in Josh Thompson from Northwestern. They're currently working him at second-string right tackle, although he played guard for Northwestern. I mean, all of these positions, man, if any one of them you looked up and they weren't starting at where they were starting in spring, I would probably just it wouldn't even be a click on the radar for me. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
We'll see, man. I mean, look, it's the most interesting position for LSU heading into the season because you're replacing 4 starters, and outside of Garrett Dellinger, you had remarkable health on that unit a year ago as well. So, I mean, when you turn over that much and struggling to run the ball like they did, there's going to be a lot of eyes on that spot. And through spring, they ran out a lot of different combinations, not too much to glean. So it'll be a talking point throughout the rest of the summer and obviously through fall camp before they kick it off against Clemson on August 30th. He is Preston Guy. Read his stuff over at tigerbait.com. You can get him on Twitter at PGuy77. Of course, hear him every Friday here on the Hunt Palmer Show. Preston, we appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you. LSU men's basketball just picked up their 7th transfer portal commitment. PJ Carter, a guard out of Memphis. We'll touch on that to close hour number 1. Right now, though, since I teased it going into break, I do want to talk New Orleans Saints. So, this time last week, the first round of the draft had come and gone. So, we're not quite a week removed from the entire draft, but we're getting close. And the dust is continuing to settle. And when you look back at New Orleans, I mean, a lot of the conversation this week has been spent on Tyler Shuck, as it should be, and Kelvin Banks. All of that makes sense. Offensive line was a huge need. You knew you needed quarterback as well. The Shuck pick was pretty polarizing in a sense as well because, man, could you have gotten him later in the draft? All those reasons, we don't need to rehash those. They've been talked about plenty throughout this week as the dust has been settled. But if you remember our months-long conversations about what New Orleans needed to accomplish in this draft, remember what everybody said? They have so many needs, you can't really go wrong. Make your pick. You need it. Well, it's very true. And New Orleans had 9 selections. And I certainly didn't think they were going to make all 9 picks because they never use all of they never make all their picks in the draft. You most likely didn't think they were going to use all 9 picks because they never make all their picks in the draft. Well, they did, and it's a good thing they did because, again, our conversations. You have so many needs, take a pick. Make your pick. Can't go wrong. For the large majority, the Saints filled all their needs. You got Kelvin Banks, all right, offensive tackle. Quarterback depth, Tyler Shuck, love it. Devin Neal late, which everyone loves as a value pick. Running back, awesome. Vernon Broughton, defensive tackle, great. You even signed an edge, undrafted free agent in Jasheem Davis out of Wake Forest, who looks like he has a great shot to make this team. Cornerback, Quincy Riley, perfect. Safety. That was I'm blanking on his name, from Virginia. Sanker, Jonas Sanker. Go down the list. They hit them all. The one they didn't hit, well, that was wide receiver. And it's the one that they still need. And specifically, a possession receiver. And what's so interesting with the Saints at wide receiver right now is even knowing like that's what they need, they just haven't gone and got it. And look, Mickey Loomis said post-draft, that's the spot. It's the one spot they would have liked to have been able to get somebody. And there were a couple spots in the draft they thought they would, but the guy they wanted was taking a couple picks ahead of them. And they didn't like him enough to want to trade up, and or they couldn't find a partner to trade up to make it done, get it done. Okay. But even in the undrafted free agent pool, the Saints signed 2 receivers. And I'll ask you another question. When talking about the Saints, we're talking about possession receiver, what's the one thing everyone throws out? The size. That's what you need. Right? Man, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, you love it. Well, they're both right around 6 foot. Same deal with Brandon Cooks, who you brought in. Okay, well, undrafted free agents. Did you go get some size? You brought in 2 wide receivers? No, you didn't. Chris Tyrese, 5'11". Moochie Dixon is 6 foot tall. Both under 200 pounds. They're made in the same mold as Olave, Shaheed, Cooks, all the guys that you have. Even Mason Tipton from a year ago. They have to go out and get size. They have to go out and get a possession receiver. And you know some of the names that we're going to go through here, especially the first 2 we're going to talk about. But there's some others to keep an eye on as well. Now, The Saints have $27 million in cap space right now to use. I want to preface this next part of the conversation by saying this. I don't care how much money the Saints have in cap space. I don't think they're going to be very good next year. You're probably in the same boat. You probably don't think the Saints are going to be very good next year. But the New Orleans Saints are going to go try to win now. They're going to sign veterans, and they're going to do their best. And in reality, it probably won't work out or amount to much. But since that's what they're going to do, and they're going to try to create the best version of this team, how do they do that, and what receiver can help them? First on that list is going to be Keenan Allen. That's the name you've probably heard most, and you should. Keenan Allen's a veteran in this league. He's been awesome, 6-time Pro Bowler, all of those things that you kind of know. He's got experience in Kellen Moore's offense, one season in 2023 with the Chargers, and boy, did he shine that year. 108 receptions, which is the most in his career. 1,243 yards, which is the second most yardage in his career. 7 touchdowns, second most touchdowns in his career. He was awesome in Kellen Moore's offense. Now, they needed him a little more because there were some injuries in the Chargers receiving core, but he shined. You look a year ago, he played in 15 games, but it was some low marks in his career in Chicago. Putting him back in Kellen Moore's offense, that could look good. Like, that could work. But by his own admission, Keenan Allen, after the 2024 season he just spent in Chicago, said on record about his future, Los Angeles. He'd like to get back to Los Angeles, whether the Rams or the Chargers. Yes, he'd stay in Chicago, but the caveat there is he moved out there alone. He kept his family in Southern California, which is why he would like to get back there. Things can change. Maybe the Chargers, the Rams don't have a spot for him. He wants to play another year, and New Orleans comes with a really good offer and reunites him with Kellen Moore. That could work. What if it's not Keenan Allen? Because, again, that's the name you've heard most. What if it's not him? Who else? Amari Cooper would be next in line. And, again, it makes a lot of sense. Amari Cooper, high draft pick when he came out of Alabama, spent 3 years in Kellen Moore's offense in Dallas and had great success. In 2020, most receptions in his career, 130. 2 1,100-yard seasons, 1 Pro Bowl. All of that under Kellen Moore. The issue with Amari Cooper is in the last 2 years combined, he's played in 14 games. The durability might not be there. And if you're the Saints and you're adding somebody, you better add somebody durable. Because of the struggles you've had in the training room the last 2 seasons. None bigger, none worse than a season ago, but the last 2 years. So you better bring in somebody durable. And if it's not either of those two, I'll throw out a couple more names for you. One of them's DJ Chark. And hear me out. I understand the production from DJ Chark hasn't been great really over the course of his entire 7-year career in the NFL. He had the 1 Pro Bowl year in Jacksonville, went over 1,000 yards, and he was awesome, and it looked like, man, they got such a steal. There's been some injuries involved as well. I mean, well, he didn't make his debut a season ago for the Chargers until week 10. And even then, he only played in 7 games. And even with that, he only had 10 targets on the year. But Chark's the youngest of these guys, but he's still towards the back end of his career. He'll be 29, at some point during this season in 2025. But it would also just fit kind of what the Saints have been doing lately. And that's bringing back guys with Louisiana ties or having played for LSU later in their career. Tyrann Mathieu, Devon Godchaux, Jarvis Landry, Will Clapp, even Justin Reed, Louisiana guy, didn't play for LSU, but Louisiana guy. That is a route they have gone. Chark's definitely got the size, 6'3", 200 pounds. And albeit 1 year, he's proven that he can do well in the NFL. And the key thing with that is you're not asking him to go out there and be a 1,000-yard receiver. You're asking him to win some one-on-ones for you. And given the ties to the state and them leaning into that a little bit more, I think that would absolutely be an option. You can get him cheap. Made $3 million a year ago. But with your cap space, would you want to spend a little bit more? The other one I would throw out would be Nelson Aguilar. But again, he fits more into the mold of a Chris Olave, a Rashid Shaheed. That's kind of why I saved him for last. Because for me, that's not really what you're looking for. 6 foot, 200 pounds. And what's Olave? Like 6'1", 197? Like, pretty comparable. Outside of the 1 year in Philly where he dropped everything and everybody just started a narrative that he was a bad receiver, Nelson Aguilar's been pretty darn good over his decade-long career in the NFL. He's been durable. You like that? Guys played in double-digit games all 10 years. So you love to see that. But again, the production, down. You're not asking him to be, the Nelson Aguilar of 2018 that caught 97 balls. That's not what you're looking for. You just need that compliment. Because you feel good with Olave and Shaheed, given Olave's health, to lead you as a 1-2. Do I think Rashid Shaheed's actually a number 2 in the NFL? Not really. I think he's a really good number 3, great deep threat guy who can stretch the field, big play caliber receiver. That certainly has a role. But also, with Olave and Shaheed as your 1-2 last year, when you were healthy, you saw the Saints get off to a record-setting offensive start. So who's to say that can't work? But you have to go out and find the big body guy. And so far, whether they had their eyes on somebody in the draft and it just didn't work out like Mickey Loomis said, they just haven't gone after that player. And I'll point to the undrafted rookies they brought in one more time. 5'11" and 6 foot. You just keep bringing in guys that look like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. You have to bring in a wide receiver, and they have to be that possession type guy because you have lacked that ever since the Michael Thomas saga started and ended. Once the injury bug started biting Thomas, you were never able to replace that. And now that he's out the door, haven't been able to replace it. And that's the one thing you need regardless of who's playing quarterback. Whether it's Tyler Shuck, whether it's Spencer Rattler, whether it's Jake Haener, whether it's Derek Carr. They have to have a guy they know they can go to, put up the 50-50 ball, throw into tight coverage, that guy's going to come down with the football. And right now, they lack that. Those are 4 options. Your top 2 and a couple guys to consider. They all fit with New Orleans for different reasons. You got the cap space. You're hell-bent on proving that you can compete now. Well, let's see it. Go out, sign someone, see if you can compete now. I don't think they can. But we'll follow along as they make their latest effort here in 2025.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp.
All right, Matt McMahon and the LSU men's basketball team added again for the second time this week. Of course, earlier in the week, they had Pablo Tamba out of the transfer portal to give them 6. As we were talking to Preston Guy earlier in this hour, LSU pulls off another one in the transfer portal. Memphis transfer guard P.J. Carter pledges to the Tigers, signs with the Tigers. The LSU basketball program has already announced it officially, so he is the 7th member of LSU's transfer portal class. We'll get into some numbers here momentarily, but a little bit on P.J. Carter. Again, as I said, out of Memphis, 6'4", immediate addition to your backcourt, but not in a starting role. He's going to be bench, which when we get into numbers, it'll make a lot of sense. But the one reason I like this a lot is while you look at it, and he averaged just 5 points per game for Memphis a year ago, he was a massive 3-point threat for them. And LSU, it tracks with what they've done in the portal. They have added 3-point shooters, whether it be DJ Thomas, Rashad King, Max McKinnon is a sharp shooter from out there. Even some of the wings you've added stretch the floor and can shoot the 3-point shot. And that's what Matt McMahon wants. He wants LSU to be able to shoot from range. They thought they had that figured out a little bit coming into this season. You remember early, they were shooting threes like nobody's business, just jacking them up. They weren't falling. You weren't good at it. And eventually you realize I said, okay, well, let's figure out a way to win in a different way. And, it obviously didn't work very well. You weren't very good. But you've addressed that, or at least you've taken further steps to address that. So I love it from that perspective. Matt McMahon's teams at Murray State had great guard play. They shot the three well, but it goes beyond that. In the SEC, you better shoot the three. Auburn shoots a bunch of threes. Alabama shoots a bunch of threes. Tennessee shoots a bunch of threes. Like the teams at the top that you're trying to compete with, they launch threes, they make them. LSU needs to get there. I love the addition of PJ Carter. Again, now you can look at numbers. LSU has 2 players returning from last year's team. That's it, 2. Robert Miller, Jalen Reed. That's it. With 7, you're now at 9. LSU's not going to get to 15. We know that because of NIL, and they're going to spread their resources out more evenly among the team, or be able to pay, better players, use their resources that way, pay more to better players to get them here. Right now, you're at 9. You need more than 9, so they're not done. I would tell you 11 to 12, probably a good sweet spot there. Once you get to 10, you have 2 rotations you can go in there, and you get a little more guys at the end. You feel like you've got your starters figured out. You've added that. With DJ Thomas and King and guys that we've mentioned. Now you're trying to build the depth of this team. And I think PJ Carter could be an awesome depth piece, especially giving you a spark shooting off the bench like he did for Memphis a year ago. We'll see. I don't think they're done yet, being at 9. But I like the addition of PJ Carter an awful lot. All right, hour number 2 is next. Richard Zane to talk Texas A&M.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Live After 5 is back Friday, May 2nd. The free downtown concert series from 5 p.m. till